Welcome to Nowstalgia Year in Review. I'm Pat Sheehan with my co-host Dave Martinson. Dave, we're gonna be talking some music today. How are you feeling about 2019 as a music year?
A fast year, but I think it was a very good year. I quite enjoyed tons of music this year. Listened to tons of it.
Yeah, how many albums did you
Shit,
listen
I
to?
don't have the exact count. It's several hundred.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Maybe 300 something.
We had to have reviewed over 100 ourselves
Yeah,
just for the
easy.
podcast.
hmm
So, if you want to go back and listen to all those and get our thoughts on the music that stood out to us this year or maybe did not stand out to us this year, go to youtube.com/nostalgiapod, hit subscribe, or go to soundcloud.com/nostalgiapod and listen to the podcast any way you enjoy it. I agree. In making these lists, we're going to be doing top albums and songs of 2019 today. But in making these lists, I was taken aback by just how much music I really, really liked this year. And compared to 2018, it felt like the highs of 2018 might have been a little bit higher for me. But I think the consistency of this year, it was very deep. I ended up making like a list of like 20 to maybe like 25 albums. I was like, I'd
Right.
consider this one or this one or this one. And then kind of paring it down was very tough for me. Was that kind of similar to your process?
Yeah, I actually had a much harder time making a songs list.
Mm-hmm.
Albums, though, yeah, I had a lot, and it was just like, how do I pick? What do I think makes a better statement by having on the list versus not, stuff like that. Similar thoughts and sentiments that we've shared for our decade lists that you can find on youtube.com/nostalgiapod. Actually, before we begin, I actually wanted to ask you, did you have anything that stood out to you as your most disappointing
Oh,
album of the year or
oh yeah.
lackluster album? I have one obvious answer.
I think we might have the same one. Chance the Rapper?
Correct.
Yeah. I
That's
was
like,
going through them all. I was like,
yeah.
damn, I had such high hopes for this Chance album and just very bland and basic.
Yes, I agree. The Big Day was not big for us, and that sucks.
Yeah, definitely sucks. Just to as a disclaimer here, so we're gonna be talking music lists a little bit, or song list after. We both, I think, tried to stay away from duplicating our list too much. For example, I probably could have put one or two Vampire Weekend songs in my songs of the year list, but that's no fun to talk about the same things twice. So our lists are gonna be fairly variant, but just know that a lot of the songs that are on our album list probably could have been up there for songs of the year for us as well, I'd imagine. Um,
Right.
why don't we jump in with number 10? Dave, what's your number 10 album of the year?
Yeah, my number 10 album is actually an album that we did not review on the pod because I came to it late, as did, I feel like, the whole music critical community.
Gex?
That would be 100 Gex, their debut album, 1000 Gex, all 1000 of the Gex. And yeah, this album came out May 31st, and so did another album that I put on my list that we'll get to later. But yeah, for whatever reason, we didn't talk about it. I first became aware of the name when they were announced as the opening act on Brockhampton's most recent tour. And apparently to that point, they hadn't really done any kind of live shows at all. This is a electronic music duo. And yeah, like the critics, the music podcast, the reviews, they started rolling out like several months later, which is, I think it's pretty rare to see mainstream music outlets actually review stuff for the first time way after release.
Mm-hmm.
And it was kind of cool to see that, I feel like an organic acknowledgement of an act like that. That was really cool. They had an EP that I also heard this year, right before this album as well. That came out last year. But the reason I have 1000 Gex on here is because I just think this Gex sound is just the craziest genre blending shit I ever heard this year.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like electro pop with like pop punk influence and 303 influence and hip hop, and there's so much stuff thrown together, and not all of it works. That's the thing. I think there's tons of weird shit on this album, but when it hits, it's like unlike anything else. Songs like 745 Sticky or Money Machine. Yeah, 100 Gex, the most interesting electronic music I've heard this year pretty easily.
Wow. An album I've not listened to, but you've been talking to me a lot about them, and I think similar to Brockhampton a couple of years back, how you said I had to get into them. I definitely want to give them a shot because they seem like a very intriguing band, and I've seen a lot of praise for them from a lot of people I trust. So definitely gonna check them out. My number 10, we just talked about it on a podcast recently. Bubba by Kaytranada. Just an album I found myself listening to nonstop since it came out.
Under the Wire selection.
Yeah. And, with Kaytranada, and we've talked about the state of EDM and how really there's only a couple of DJs out there right now that we find to be doing anything interesting. Yep. And Kaytranada is certainly doing some interesting stuff. There's a lot of like classic Kaytranada type sounds on here, things that you would have found on 99.9%, but the features he has, and obviously, as we talked about in our review, this is the first album he's dropped with RCA, so able to maybe get some more people on here. But like The Worst in Me, Midsection, Vex O, Oh No with Estelle, 10% Kaylee Ukis is just hit after hit on this.
Gray Area.
And they all sound so interesting and so alive and unique, and really just a pleasure to listen to that album. And shout out to Kaytranada for getting that in Under the Wire. I had originally thought for this spot about putting an album that didn't make it in Under the Wire last year, which would have been 21 Savage, I Am Greater Than I Was. But I was kind of on the fence, like, is that too far away at this point? So I kind of left it off.
Yeah. It came out December 21st, I believe. Yeah. I consider it as well.
Yeah. So I'm guessing it didn't make your list.
It did not. Last year I had Run the Jewels 3, even though that was like a December 2017, same thought. Yeah, honorable mention for 21 for sure. It looks like nothing major is going to get released between now and the second week of January when Selena Gomez drops, and I hope that sticks because I just feel like critical attention won't be as strong, and like there's no one's really looking for new stuff at this time, so we'll just wait. And it seemed like, because last year, Bad Bunny drops on like the 27th or something.
Yep.
And yeah, it sounds like we're going to be a little lucky. Everyone dropped last week with Harry and Katra.
Why don't we jump to your number 9?
So my number 9 is perhaps the most widely listened to album on my list. That'd be Ariana Grande's Thank You Next. Just pop excellence, put simply. As soon as I heard it, I really loved it, and I was blown away by the fact that she was able to one-up herself so quickly after dropping Sweetener in the summer of 2018. I believe it was a 5-month wait in between those albums. And Thank You Next was just kind of Sweetener in itself was definitely a level up for her, where she finally stopped trying to impress us with her amazing vocal range and actually just focus more on the songcraft, side of being a pop artist. And then with Thank You Next, I just think the lyrical content, she really took it to a next level while still having all those pop bangers. You have a Max Martin classic like Bad Idea. You have an amazing NSYNC interpolation with Break Up With Your Girlfriend. You have a really heartfelt song that you can attribute to Mac Miller and Ghostin'. Other fun stuff like Imagine and NASA. There's just lots of pop bangers, but I think these are actually like pop songs that like can stand the test of time because there's actually some substance. So yeah, Thank You Next came out back in February. It's been a long time at this point, but yeah, banger season.
One of my honorable mentions, Ariana just absolutely dominated with that album. And when I was reviewing my album, or when I was going through this list, I kind of felt like a lot of what I came to was artists, specifically female artists, I felt like took a step up this year from how I had viewed them. A lot of them, I think, showing me a little bit more than I had expected or anticipated I would, in terms of how much I would like their albums. So I'm excited to talk a little bit more about some of the artists, but Ariana for sure was one of those. I wasn't a huge Ariana fan before this album, and I think there's a lot to like there. Number 9 for me, a new female artist, Little Sims, Gray Area. So Dave, we reviewed this back in, I believe it was like March or February. March 1st it came out.
Yes.
And uh, Lil Sims, this rapper from the UK, really surprised me with like the lusciousness of this album. It kind of reminded me of uh, a bit of like a mix of like Vince Staples and Tyler the Creator type vibes in terms of
Huh,
like the uniqueness to the album, but
sure.
also the depth of the lyrics, having something to say, making it ultra personal. I mean, one of the tracks on this is called Therapy, and it's literally like she's talking with a therapist and kind of really observing her thoughts. Um, and I was really blown away by this, and I feel like Little Sims, if there's one artist that's still kind of flying under the radar, but feels like there's just potential to be great there, and that's just kind of come about this year. It's got to be her, and she kind of jumps into that discussion of great female rappers that really broke out this year. And there's quite a few of them, and we were even talking about this last year with names like No Name, Tierra Whack. Again, then
Hmm.
this year, Rico Nasty, Megan the Stallion, just to name a few. But Lil Sims feels like she's poised to have a really, really solid career. And this album, Gray Area, is great. 101 FM just kind of jumped on shuffle the other day, and I was just like bobbing
Hmm.
around to it. It's such a good track, man. So a lot to like there. Was this on your list?
So the album did not make my list as honorable mention, but 101 FM might be coming up later.
Ah,
So,
okay. We'll talk
yeah.
about it then.
Hmm.
Number 9, Lil Sims, Gray Area for me. Moving on to 8.
So 8 for me is had to have 8. Eight for me. Someone you just mentioned, Megan Thee Stallion,
Ooh.
debut mixtape Fever. It's funny when we did the review, we were like, "Is this her album? Is it not?" She's clarified on Instagram that it is in fact her mixtape. So
Mm.
the hype for the Megan debut album, quote unquote, not that that means anything to her anymore. 2020, I guess. But
Ooh.
yeah, so Megan Thee Stallion, man. You just kind of spoke to it, but I think the most important central theme of hip hop in 2019, again, the dominating genre, in our society, that would be the rise of the female MC, and not just the quantity, but the quality to boot. And Megan certainly was, I think, the fastest riser of the bunch. With obviously real hot girl shit, hot girl summer. Like she became a meme, she became a force in herself. But following up the early EP success she had in 2018, songs like Big Old Freak, she dropped a lot more bangers and just kind of proved that, yeah, she's a really uh, capable rapper that I think deserves to have her voice heard. I think the first track on Fever, Realer, I think is my favorite song. And then you'll see a lot of Cash Shit featuring DaBaby. You'll see that on a lot of lists this year. And I think ultimately it's a short, I think 30-minute tape, but little fat on it. It's just it's got that energy, but more importantly, I think it's just was a really fun coming out party, and it's cool that she just became a star just like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Just a complete breakout for her, twerking her way all the way to the top. Yeah, it's been awesome to see her and DaBaby really become these like mammoths in the field all of a sudden, just everywhere, dominating all the time. It's great. Good pick. My number 8, an album. I started with Kate Shinoda, which was a recent album that came out one of the first weeks of the year. James Blake, Assume Form.
Nice.
Yeah, we when we talked about this album, and we were talking about leveling up. James Blake was an artist that I think for both of us had songs here and there that we really liked, but we never really felt like he was able to put it together and make a really solid album. And then Assume Form came about, and as a work of art as a whole, I feel like this album flows beautifully. It has great transitions from song to song. It doesn't sound like any other album I've listened to this year. A song like Can't Believe the Way We Flow just is like such a distinct James Blake track, and especially the way it like almost like restarts in the middle, and beautifully done. And this really feels like James Blake was able to take his own personal endeavors, relationships, and kind of put them in a way that was packaged, I think, that's more palatable for most music fans. And this just feels like the absolute best that James done yet. And it's a pleasure listening to this. Songs like Mile High with Travis Scott, Metro Boomin, even those songs that may not be the best tracks on the album, I think still are fun to listen to. I really like the track with Andre 3000, Where's the Catch? That's just an absolute banger to me.
Where's the catch?
Yep. And then the last like four, I just find myself kind of listening to and really enjoying the way that they flow together. So Assume Form, my number 8 album of the year. Moving on, number 7. What do you got?
Number 7 for me, making my list 2 years in a row. That'd be Denzel Curry, Zoo. Zoo came out the same day as 100 Gex, funny enough. And Megan came out 2 weeks before Gex and Denzel. And I have another May album coming up. Somehow I picked 4 May albums. Did not plan it that way. But yeah, Denzel Curry's Zoo. Again, more of a mixtape feel similar to Megan. But, Denzel really showing out in the critical sense and really becoming I think a really well-respected rapper last year with Taboo, which was, a really dark conceptual album that was quite detailed. To follow it up just a year later with Zoo, which he claims he freestyled, this really fun, energetic album that's true to his Miami roots, but still also deep. Like listen to like the lead single Ricky, he's able to make, I just think, lots of great bangers while also maintaining his message. And we always kind of flock to that, where sometimes lyrical rappers struggle to make songs that people actually want to turn on. That's not Denzel's issue. On this, was it Automatic? That's a Take Keith beat that he's able to flip and make into a Denzel Curry song. One of the hottest rappers that we have an idea of what Take Keith sounds like, but Denzel's able to twist it to his own use. And of course, we had a Rick Ross feature on here, which is not the first time they've collaborated, but the first time since Denzel got really well respected. So
yeah. Birds is a great song.
Yeah. So Denzel Curry's Zoo, man. He's still at the top of my list for artists I have not yet seen that I would really like to see live.
Great pick. That was one of the hardest ones for me to leave off my list. Definitely an honorable mention. This album rules. And it's just, there's so much energy to it, and it feels like such a good way to describe Denzel Curry. He just feels like a ball of energy just spitting out tracks. So excellent choice. My number 7, an album we talked about, and I talked about liking a lot, On the Line by Jenny Lewis. Jenny Lewis was an artist who I was aware of, but never really sank my teeth into, never really caught me. And then this album is just so catchy from start to finish, and there's so many tracks that are just absolutely delightful. And it's all this this talk about addiction, and addiction in multiple ways, talking about her mom and her mom's heroin addiction, but then also in the same song, Wasted Youth, mentioning addiction to Candy Crush and how that has a similar I think, or has similarities in terms of how it affects culture and the people who find themselves addicted to these things. But she really jumps around with these really personal topics, but packages them in ways that feel so poppy and fun, and you just find yourself bobbing your head to. Like Red Bull and Hennessy feels just like a really fun track, but really this commentary on partying and connecting with friends, losing friends. You kind of go down the line, like a song like On the Line, probably my favorite track from the album, a really personal song about a relationship and being left, and it's still just a delight to listen to, and you keep running it back, even though it's maybe not the most fun stuff to be sitting with. So just a delight of an album. Really enjoyed Jenny Lewis on this, and I'm excited to see where she goes next, because if she can keep delivering these, I'll keep listening. So number 7, On the Line. Dave, moving on to number 6. What do you got?
Number 6 for me is Solange, When I Get Home, which dropped back in March 1st, same day as Little Sims. Did this make your list?
It did not, and I was really debating it, because as a as an album, it's fantastic, and it all flows together really well. Almost kind of like an Earl album in a sense. Like, it just it's so unique, and I just didn't find myself going back to it much.
Sure.
And for how much I found myself going back to the other ones, I wanted to maybe highlight some other albums. I figured you'd have it, so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, this was kind of the hotly awaited follow-up to See at the Table back in 2016, which was the reestablishment of Solange as a solo artist after a lot of time out of the spotlight. And I don't think it gets to the highs of a Seat at the Table. Songs like Cranes in the Sky, Don't Touch My Hair. Those are some like really world-class R&B songs. But I think When I Get Home still honestly is really slick. Stay Flow. I really love that song. Thought about putting it on my songs list, to be honest. Almeida, great Cardi feature. That song bops. Bins is really good.
Yeah, Bins is great.
Yeah. It's just really slick. Message filled R&B, and it's funny. I can't really even think of any other R&B albums I really loved this year, and this one's already been out so long. And unfortunately, the Grammys overlooked this project, which felt really shocking to me. But yeah, Solange is super talented and thoughtful, and you can see it even in the videos for this album. They're all kind of connected, and some are way less high budget than others, but it's just a good time. So,
yeah,
Solange, number 6.
Excellent album, and great choice by you. Number 6 for me, I'm wondering if you had this on your list, Norman fucking Rockwell by Lana Del Rey.
That is number 3 for me.
So we'll be talking about it a little bit more, or we can just talk about it now.
Yes,
Lana Del Rey. So, talking about artists that felt like they leveled up. Another artist who I recognized that she has a large fan base. People love her. She kind of fits in this like emo pop world, kind of, like maybe a more polished Billie Eilish before Billie Eilish was around, in a sense.
Huh.
Or at least a different vibe. But I think we both kind of talked about it in our review that she never really caught our attention, or we never really dug her as much as other people. But then Norman fucking Rockwell comes out. Man, talk about leveling up. You pair up with Jack Antonoff, and she
Secret sauce
delivers song after song on this. Yeah, that is just beautiful, really, and such a commentary on like current culture on all these tracks. I mean, the first track talking about man-child, the first line talking about man-child is just hilarious, but also so like apt, I think, for the state of like feminism and the way male and female relations are being kind of critiqued at the moment. And then you kind of move down the line, and like a song like the next great Best American Record, The Greatest, which is probably my favorite song on this track. And Kanye West is Blonde and Gone. Yep. I think I'll be interested to see if we're talking more about Kanye West today. But yeah, I was impressed with how well she was able to construct an album that felt cohesive, but also I think more appealing than some of her past works. Why this fall number 3 for you?
Yeah, Lana finally, to me, backed up the huge microscope that had been on her career and her celebrity with the music. And in the case of Norman fucking Rockwell, which is what her 6th album, I finally get what it means to be Lana Del Rey. Like that 50s, 60s Americana that's always kind of been a aspect of her music, of her aesthetic, of her videos. Now finally I think makes sense to me, because she's coming at it with a modern day worldview, as you mentioned, right from the first track. And she's someone who has kind of like played in and around like feminist ideas, but never really explored anything that profoundly in her past work. And I think that has changed finally. And just in terms, you mentioned Jack Antonoff's pretty prolific on this, but in terms of song structure, a song like Venice Bitch, which has like a really infectious first like 2.5 minutes and then a really long extended outro. Just I think a really cool way that was made. Then you followed up 2 songs later with a honestly really awesome Sublime cover of Doing Time, you know? And you mentioned The Greatest. We might be talking about that again in a second. But yeah, I think the more I reflected on this when I was making the album, I was like, yeah, there's just like so much to this album I think really, really holds up. Like you can take away any of these, like most of these songs, just kind of put them on and be like, yeah, like this is peak Lana.
Mm-hmm.
And when there's that much of that all in one project, I feel like you got to include it.
Yeah, well said. And this album was a delight. Definitely one of the best of the year. Let's move on to number 5. What would you have at 5, Dave?
Number 5 for me is YBN Cordae, The Lost Boy.
Wow, good choice.
Of all the records I heard this year, this was definitely the one that met the hype the best and thus made me feel so fulfilled because I had been anticipating and hyping up the promise of YBN Cordae, who had not released a solo project under that name since he had rose into prominence in 2018. And then what we get with this album is more proof of his incredible technical rap ability and, you know, pretty dexterous flows, but also I think the ability to provide conscious rap that also bangs. Again, something that I just said before with Lil Sims, you know, is easier said than done. And he even provides like more throwback vibes with a song like R&P where he's doing couplets with Anderson .Paak, right? And for me, like I know like we can criticize some of the flows on this. I think sometimes the flow is a little simple and sometimes the puns can be a little corny, but this album for me was just like a coronation of just the talent and like the potential being realized already. Again, we had talked before about how he had the Dr. Dre co-sign without an official project out yet. Definitely quite the stamp of approval. And, you know, he was able to get inspired features from Pusha and Meek on this and of course Anderson. So yeah, for me, it was just the coronation of like a new rising star. And I just felt so happy with the quality of it when it came out and I've run back a lot of the songs. I felt like, you know, I'm definitely going to remember this is, you know, the year that YBN Cordae really started.
Yeah, I think if for me, who's maybe not as definitely not as tuned into the rap world as you are, this was like a coming out party for him, and it felt like such an establishing of like, all right, I'm going to be here for a while. So a worthy pick. Glad you put it on there. Number 5 for me was Brittany Howard's first solo album, Jamie. Brittany Howard, you know, the lead singer of the Alabama Shakes. We talked about her a bit. You know, we even I think mentioned her on the Best of the Decade podcast we did. So check that out. This album, I had no idea what this was going to sound like. You know, we prior to the singles being released and like the word that there was an album forthcoming, followed it more into like what the last Alabama Shakes album sounded like, which was you know, genre blending, but a bit more stripped down, a bit more acoustic. And she's really all over the map on this, right? So she is some songs like 13th Century Metal is a fucking rock metal song and just going hard while she does some like trancy spoken word over these awesome instrumentals. But then you have songs like Stay High, which is just like a singer songwritery acoustic bop, and one of the sweetest songs of the year in my opinion. I was absolutely blown away not only by Brittany's vocals on this, but she expertly talks about her experiences of being discriminated against in her childhood growing up in Georgia, talking about her own sexuality and her identity as a gay female and a black gay female at that. And really just one of the albums this year that has stuck with me, and I find myself revisiting a couple of the songs a couple times a week because it's just always a pleasure to hear them, and her voice is just one of the best out there, I think. So Jamie by Brittany Howard, my number 5. Number 4 for you, Dave.
Number 4 for me is, oh fuck, I don't think I have a picture for this. Number 4 for me is FKA Twigs, Magdalene.
My number 1.
Oh fuck! All right. Yeah, I think this is another
Let's
example.
talk about it.
Yeah, there's another example of an artist blowing past previous expectations, and I think delivering a full body of work that was not anticipated to be this impressive. You know, like LP1 was the first time. You know, and catching up recently with FK Twigs in anticipation for the album. LP1 was the first time I really started to get what it meant to like this art pop, alt pop sound. You know what it was, and yeah, there's some really good songs on that. But then hearing Magdalene, and just the way that Twiggy can communicate the emotional distress she's had in her life in the tabloids and racial identity, and there's a lot of deep shit on this, and just kind of deliver this really unique sound. I was just really impressed. Yeah, I feel like it's kind of malpractice not to include this album.
Oh, dude, I mean, this album is pretty close to perfection in my book. You know, as I'm like scrolling through the track list here on my phone, because I'm just thinking about each song, I keep hearing it kind of just come through, like the Mary Magdalene, or Fallen Alien. Like her vocals on that are so like haunting, but like beautiful at the same time. And the production all over this, you know, we talked about it at the time, but she had a lot of people helping her refine this album and really make it, I think, have a real feel to it, you know. And I think what FKA Twigs does so expertly throughout this is she establishes a mood, but then she is able to like you said, sprinkle in all these different topics in these songs, but still maintaining this vibe throughout that just carries a feeling with you. And it feels like there's so much emotion in every single one of these songs. And you know, one of the reviews I read about this at the time was it feels like you can almost feel her physicality coming through. And I guess it's hard, especially if you see like the Cellophane video and you see like her physicality as a dancer and just how much she is able to do with her body as a instrument for art. But it just feels like this is like almost her opus in a way as an artist. And you know, Art Pats doesn't take a lot of L's, but I think FKA Twigs really handed him one on this. So definitely my favorite album of the year, and I think certainly a worthy choice for any list. Like you said, it's almost malpractice to not have it on there. Number 4 for me, a song, an album I don't think you'll have on your list, Dave. Vampire Weekend, Father of the Bride.
Actually, no, just kidding.
I was gonna say, there's no way that you're gonna have this on here. When we reviewed it, I think you talked about how you liked it, but you like, it's fine. They're still soft, right?
Correct. Yeah, it was my favorite of their albums.
Yeah,
and still not my cup of tea.
And I think Vampire Weekend with this, it feels like a bit of a departure from their traditional sound. You know, they're usually very tight, these very uppity type sounding songs. This feels a little bit more in line with classic rock, I'd say. You know, a lot of the singles like Harmony Hall or This Life had the very like Van Morrison, early Rolling Stones type feel to them.
Sure.
And I think that really added a piece to it. But when I revisit this album, and I revisit it a lot. It's, you know, if you check out my Spotify,
shocking.
Yeah, if you check out my Spotify year-end Wrapped, it's 4 of my top 5 songs played this year from this album. I'm really impressed with the songwriting on it, and interestingly enough, Casey Musgraves and Ezra collaborated on a lot of the writing on this album. And he felt very inspired by the way that she writes her songs, and maybe that's something to do with it because he also got a lot of credits on her album last year, Golden Hour. And I feel like they explore so many different sounds that Vampire Weekend hasn't put into their music before, but it all comes out sounding really, really good. Um, going like from a song like I already said, like This Life, which has a very like Van Morrison feel to it, to something like Sympathy, which is like this like almost like mariachi band type feel, where it's just so much like anxiety and like intensity in this song, and ending in these like I don't even know what the instrument is, but he's like at the end, it's so good. Then you go something like Sunflower, which feels like it's this like jazzy pop song. 2021 and Flower Moon are a bit more like Flower Moon, same vein as like Sunflower, a little bit more like jazzy pop, but like 2021 or We Belong Together are songs that feel like they are just these like ballads kind of in a way, but like these softer ballads. So there's a lot to like on here. Vampire Weekend, Ezra Koenig continue to be some of my favorite work, and highly recommend. If you don't like them, see them live, because I think you'll get a different feel for them. But Father of the Bride, my number 4. Dave, your number 3 was already talked about, correct?
That would be Lana, yes.
I think I'm talking about one of your top albums then, Igor by Tyler, the Creator. Where's it fall for you?
Igor is number 1 for me.
I'll let you take the floor then. Go for it.
No, this was Tyler capitalizing on the kind of reawakening he showed us in Flower Boy, while also being able to, I think, satisfy his own creative desires by being like the sole producer, arranger, mixer, all that for this album. And it didn't turn out like Cherry Bomb. It actually was freaking incredible.
Yeah.
And it's like it's the best rap album of the year, even though it's not really a rap album. Mm-hmm. And it's just kind of cool to see how far Tyler's come. But I think you can listen to Igor for the really cool production. You can try and listen for more of Tyler telling his story. You can just try and listen to singular songs and have a good time doing that, whether it's like A Boy's a Gun or Earthquake, whatever it may be.
Earthquake.
There's just a lot here. It's actually a pretty dense album, but it's also accessible.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's just kind of a gift that keeps on giving if you listen to it intricately with good headphones.
Yeah, and it's so cohesive, and it all like there's no bad track on this at all, and it's all very interesting. But I specifically love the ending. Are We Still Friends? Feels like this like almost like this crooning type song in a sense, and I'm just like, how could Tyler, the Creator, have gone from being the guy that did Yonkers at the beginning of the decade, talked about on our Best of the Decade songs list, to being this guy? And he does it so well. And I think you kind of summed it up perfectly, but this is an album. I don't skip any songs start to finish. The production on this is interesting, and he did all the production himself. I think it's his masterpiece today, and Igor, definitely one of the top songs of the year. Dave, what was your number 2 album then? Because I think we're both missing our number 2s.
Number 2 for me, Billie Eilish. When we all fall asleep, where do we go?
Wow, this is high.
This is pop music in 2019. I think we might have talked about at the beginning. The Billie Eilish breakout was not unforeseen. This was not a secret. She was already very, very famous before this album came out. And at the time, before we got this album, which came out end of March, I think me and you both kind of viewed her as low rent lord, or like the records aren't here yet. Cool aesthetic. Impressive that she's doing this at a young age. She just turned 18, I think, this week. But the sound wasn't there. And honestly, the album blew away my expectations when I heard it. And, this girl with her kind of like a goth aesthetic, but it does not get into the music at all. But she's also just kind of like embodying the Gen Z icon that she is, talking about what it means to have teen angst at the end of the 2010s. all while doing that with these really cool lo-fi beats and an understated delivery and office drops and really fun songs. It's this kind of like alt pop is, I think, it's kind of, I think it's going to change pop. If you think about, I mean, I had a lot of pop records on my list and they're all quite different, FKA Twigs, Lana, Ariana, and Billie. But Billie, I think probably has the biggest impact of them all, just because she's kind of shaping and leading the sound of, tomorrow. So
of the youth.
correct.
Yeah, no, Billie, we talked about like at the Grammys, like the best new artist category is absolutely stacked. And we're going to be talking about a couple of the other ones who are in that category soon, I think. But Billie feels like she's just poised to be like almost like a Cobain type figure for the generation below us, where she just seems to like tap into something that other artists haven't been able to yet, while also making her shit just sound super good, like just really interesting. And yeah, I'm excited to see where she goes. This was an honorable mention for me, so I'm glad that you had it on your list. Wrapping up my list, my number 2 was Sound and Fury from Sturgill Simpson.
Nice.
Probably my favorite rock album of the year, coming from a country artist. And this album, we talked about when it came out, how it was accompanied by a anime film on Netflix.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah, and Sturgill is just a really interesting guy. He's a great songwriter. He's experimented with a lot of different sounds since he broke out at the beginning of the decade. And this album, to me, goes so fucking hard. The guitars on this are
dope,
incredible to listen to. And he also jumps around as he's telling this, like, I don't know, futuristic type story about, I don't know, like killers and
being on the run, I think.
Yeah, being on the run. It's like a whole, there's like a whole plot to it. But then he kind of comes in near the end with Mercury in retrograde and makes like this dancey song that you never would ever expect Sturgill Simpson to be able to put out. And you're just like, man, this guy just like, he's a fantastic song creator. And this is another album where I'll hear a song kind of pop up in like shuffle that I hadn't heard in a while. I'll be like, this song is fantastic. And then I'll remember it's from this album. I'll be like, man, album ruled. So Sound and Fury, my number 2 of the year. You want to run through your albums list quick and then we'll jump to songs?
Yeah. 100 Gex, 1000 Gex, Ariana Grande, Thank You Next, Megan Thee Stallion, Fever, Denzel Curry, Zoo, Solange, When I Get Home, YB and Corday, The Lost Boy, FKA Twigs, Magdalene, Lana Del Rey, Norman, fucking Rockwell, Billie Eilish, When We All Fall Asleep, Where We Go, and Tyler, the Creator, Igor. 10 albums.
Nice. My 10-1, Bubba by Kate Trinata, 9, Little Sims, Gray Area, Assume Form, James Blake, On the Line, Jenny Lewis, Norman fucking Rockwell by Lana Del Rey, Jamie by Brittany Howard, number 4, Father of the Bride, Vampire Weekend, Igor, Tyler, the Creator, 2, Sound and Fury, Sturgill Simpson, and 1, Magdalene, FKA Twigs. Mary Magdalene.
Wait, we had 4 of the same albums, so a lot of variety.
Any honorable mentions for you that we didn't already shout out?
Yeah, I think we shout out some, like, some for me, like Little Sims. Charlie XCX was a really tough cut for me. I really loved Charlie. I like the 2 Chainz album a lot. I like James Blake, as you said. I like Gold Link's album. I liked Earth Gang. I love Freddie Gibbs and Madlib. Young Thug's album is fantastic. Rhapsody was really good once again, what we expect from her. Vanity Wise, I love the Beast Coast album. I listened to that a ton. And I also listened to Octavian's album a lot. Probably not even the best UK. I think Skepta was better. I think Lil Sims was better. And Stormzy was really great too. But Octavian, I ran back a lot. So yeah, I love this year. There was a lot of good shit from famous people and brand new people.
A lot of good shit. I had Better Oblivion Community Center by Better Oblivion Community Center.
Kana Obist.
I had I by Bon Iver as an honorable mention. Lover by Taylor Swift
Yep.
was up there
Same.
for me. And I also had Ventura by Anderson .Paak. I think a bit of an underrated album because it is probably maybe the least interesting Anderson album of the past few years.
I'd
Doesn't
agree.
mean it's not really good. And also like my own pick, Angel's Pulse by Blood Orange. I found myself coming back to a lot. I was just re-listening to it the other day, and the song "Take It Back" with Joba came on. The song is fantastic, man.